The Dingers podcast is on the air. I'm your host, Mitch. This is episode 111, and I'm here with my boy, Jake. And Ian, the legend, is back joining us, our guest. Ian, what's up, Ian?
Hey, how's it going?
Ian has a special announcement because he's going to be doing the...
What's up, Ian? Hey, how's it going?
Oh, man, this way.
Ian has a special announcement.
Ian is going to be doing the national anthem at the Iowa Cubs game.
Yeah.
So June, right?
Yeah, June 24th. So any and all.
If you're in the Des Moines area, go catch him singing the national anthem, and hopefully he'll play a gig there and we can listen to his music. So make sure you go to, and when is it? June what?
June 24th.
June 24th. So look forward to coming down, hanging out with Ian in Des Moines and catching a iCubs game because they're going to be hot in the streets in Des Moines this year. But Jake, repping that USA hat. I love it. Looking good.
I mentioned this is like I'm like the least patriotic person you'll ever meet. So like during the World Baseball Classic or the World Cup, 4th of July, like those are the 3 occasions that I can wear this hat and not feel like a goon. Like, go ahead, chant your USA, USA. Like, I'm never gonna join. That's not my thing. But I've probably worn this hat, maybe 10 times in like the 10 years that I've worn it or owned it. But yeah, feeling good about Team USA. I wish that game last night was a little bit more entertaining. When it's a blowout like that, it just like.
But the Venezuela game was so entertaining. The USA Venezuela game. So it's like,
okay. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that game was a blast. I was listening to the radio today, and I think it was Matt Spiegel talking about. I don't know. It was a Sox fan. I can't remember who it was. Someone on the score was saying that was like the Trey Turner Grand Slam was like the most like visceral feeling, like tangible feeling that they've had for baseball, maybe ever, or like since like, I think they said like the Sox 05 playoff run. And yeah, like I was watching by myself on my phone because my app wasn't working. The Fox Sports app doesn't work on my TV for whatever reason. Thanks, Fox. So I'm watching on my tiny little, iPhone mini, eating dinner by myself. And Trey goes deep, and I went like, as crazy as you're going to go by yourself in your kitchen. But it was great. I love it. I think that obviously the viewership numbers are out there. If we want to talk about it later, like obviously I think we're going to, talk a little bit about the World Baseball Classic toward the end more in detail. But it sucks that Altuve is hurt now too. We can get into that, but hey, these guys have all come out and said that they're passionate about playing for their country. And I know people have talked about it too. Trout being passionate, man. Trout being in like a playoff atmosphere that we've never gotten to see.
These are his first meaningful games in his career. So.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So that makes it all worth it for me as a fan. I do want to talk about a guy that's not playing in the World Baseball Classic. One of our Cubs, Seiya Suzuki, he's doing flips, you guys. What do we think about this oblique strain and the fact that he's already doing baseball activities? Less than 3 weeks later.
Oh man,
Jump in, Ian.
I'm torn. I can't help but think he's being rushed back. I have a lot of opinions on like athletes changing their bodies for certain things, and for me, Seiya beefing up, gaining the weight that he did in all muscle kind of lends itself and leads me to believe that there was maybe something missing from his regiment, and that is flexibility. I think the biggest example we have of flexibility and pliable muscles working for an extended amount of time is somebody like Tom Brady in the NFL, who he preached and he practiced hydration and flexibility and pliability. And there is enough science behind it where if your muscles are a little more pliable and a little more flexible, you recover from injury, they can stretch a little further. And somebody like Seiya with his frame, he's not an outrageously massive human being when it comes to his frame in general. And he just tacked on so much muscle so fast. Like seeing him come back, into the offseason, seeing these photos surface of him as just looking like a tank was highly concerning to me, because he wasn't signed to be that kind of a player anyway. He was signed to be agile and a good defender and good on the base pass. And I can't help but think that he would have slowed down anyway because of that game.
As far as him coming back early, I will say I think it is a little early, but everybody comes back from oblique injuries a little bit different, and we never really got the grade of the oblique injury like we have with other athletes. We never really got told how what severity it was, so right. I don't know. And so if he's starting, we saw him do some long tosses the other day and start throwing the ball a little bit, which that might be just initial test just to see how the oblique responded from a little bit of external rotation with the shoulder and getting a little bit of just twisting with our body. And then now we're seeing him take a little bit of swinging a bat and front flips, not actually him doing front flips, just getting flipped like soft toss. But it's good to see. It'll be more good to see if we get reports down the road this week that he responded well to the little bit of activity. Now, as far as him gaining the weight, I'm all for it. I'm all for gaining strength, not necessarily looking at it as a fact of I just want to get mass and get big, but I'm all about let's get really, really strong. The problem with that, and I'm a level 2 CrossFit coach. I work with athletes all the time, worked with the number 2 fittest woman in the world right now in CrossFit, Mallory O'Brien. It's all right to get super strong, but when you lack mobility and you're trying to gain strength, you needed to be a well-rounded athlete, and that includes cardiovascular and involves strength, involves mobility and technique and all those things. And when you're missing a piece, and I think that might have been the issue with all this, you need to be swole and flexy. You need to be able to be strong, but be flexible and be able to carry that weight and be able to apply it into baseball movements. And especially when baseball has a lot of turning and torquing with the midsection, that's something where he should be working double overtime on that mobility and being one of the most mobile. If you're going to be that big and strong, you need to be just as mobile and have just as much flexibility. And even for myself, when you get stronger, those muscles get shorter. And so you have to spend twice as amount of time working on mobility. I had to, when I got a lot stronger, I had to spend 20, 30, 40 minutes on just mobility so that I could get in proper position when I'm doing lifts and doing different things, right, so that I don't get injured. And that's where you see when big athletes get really big, they get injured. It's probably because they're missing that piece. And so that's what I'm thinking. When I heard that with Seiya going down, it's yep, that's probably because he got so big that he didn't work on any mobility. He just got big. He ate probably a ton protein and lifted weights and didn't work on flexibility, mobility, and then thrown into live BP or those type of things where you try to ramp it up and speed things up. And that's when injuries happen. So it stinks. Hopefully he comes back, and hopefully the training staff nowadays with the Cubs, which I know the Cubs strength and conditioning, they're all about mobility, flexibility. They're not necessarily about getting big, huge strength numbers. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I think that hopefully they're going to work on that as the season goes on. So this isn't a lingering injury throughout the whole season.
Yeah, I don't think that I have like too much more to add. Did you have something to chime in, Ian?
No, I mean, it's funny you talk about his diet, like the addition of so much protein, and the thing that raises the red flag to me in terms of he spent a lot of time, um, to my understanding, spent a lot of time in Japan over the off season as well. Like high protein diet
Rice, man. He just made
right. Like where did this all come from? In terms of like, because just culturally, like that kind of food, there's protein in rice, but like it's all in like moderate proportions.
Yep.
And now I'm like, man, how did he tack this much on? And I understand a lot of people are like, oh, I'm glad he got bigger. And I'm with you. I'm all for him getting stronger because
Maybe he just found all the McDonald's in Japan. Like he said he liked American food when he came over here. Maybe he like found all the American restaurants over in Japan. Like
I guess like for me, like I'm so curious. Like I'm all for him getting stronger because there were plenty of times last year where there were some good hits that were just almost out of the park, and that he just fell a little bit short on him. Like some that turned into triples, but should have been gone, or things like that, where just a little bit more strength, maybe a little bit more flexibility and pliability in that turn lets it leave the park. But we are where we're at, so I guess the tell is going to be, does he really start on the list, and if so, how long is he there for?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that you mentioned, Ian, that I think kind of stood out to me was that he wasn't this massive, Giancarlo Stanton looking guy in Japan. That's not what he was signed for. That's not what he was coveted for as a free agent getting posted last offseason. So for him to show up to camp muscular like that, the first thing that came to mind for me was Nico Horner showing up, I think the offseason or the season just before that. And that's when he suffered the oblique strain. And it was talked about, I think it was talked about on the compound, actually. Hap talked about Nico doing a different lifting program in the offseason following those injuries. And that probably included, like you were talking about, Mitch, the mobility training, which if you're listening, and if you guys don't, I'm sure you guys already follow this guy, Squat University on Instagram is like the best follow for like mobility training. It makes me wish that I had a physical therapist like that here in Madison that I could go to, because I hurt everywhere and I know I shouldn't, because I sit in this chair like 6 hours a day. But yeah, it's the mobility is important for sure. And I wonder, like, I wonder too, if you look at,
I love that you brought up Squat University, because I'm friends with Aaron. Like
you're friends with the dude?
Yeah. So he works with my friend who runs VersaLifts, who he like promotes, like they're a heel insert for your shoe for like training. And so we've worked with him. Cool. So yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. And knows his stuff.
The big thing that that I've learned from his videos is that, like, I need to figure out how to fix or compensate for my flat feet, because I'm having knee issues and ankle issues. And I know that now that's where it's stemming from. Anyway, shouts to Aaron. That's for real, give him a follow. Even if you don't lift weights, like, you're going to learn stuff like, oh yeah, I'm getting older and my body aches a little bit. Like, I should probably be stretching every day. That's a note to myself for when I listen to this back tomorrow. I also think too, though, about like, not every frame is built to support all of that muscle mass, right? So there's a fine line. Like Nick Madrigal, if Nick Madrigal came back just like, totally pumped up, obviously he's not the same size as Seiya Suzuki. There's a height difference there. Genetics come into factor too. But yeah, it just sucked that, like, when he came to camp and I saw those pictures, I was like, the first thought was, he's going to get hurt. He's going to strain something. And who knows? I mean, you would think a high level athlete like that would be getting the attention that he needs to like work on the mobility and has, but when the adrenaline kicks in and you're in those live practices and you're back on the practice field for the first time in 4 months plus, something else might kick in that like you can't simulate in off-season workouts. And that could have just been the difference maker. So I don't know. I just think that like we've seen the Cubs rush guys back with injury before. Did something just happen in the game?
3-3, baby.
Oh, let's go. I had to cut the stream. Off because I noticed that I was lagging, and it was because I was trying to stream that and
go
live. So Japan ties it up. In case Ian is wearing his Hiroshima jersey, his Hiroshima Seiya jersey, and he's got the Team Japan. Shout out to official league Team Japan. Ian and I are big fans. So he's decked out. Who hit it? Did you see who hit it?
Yeah, it was Yoshida.
Let's go. Okay, Red Sox. Okay.
Yeah,
that could be interesting. So I don't know. I mean, I hope that Seiya doesn't rush back because obviously he missed time last year. He wants to prove that he's worth the contract. He wants to show that he is the all-star plus caliber player that he is, and I think we all still believe that he is. But I just hope that he eases into it and doesn't exacerbate the injury, because we've seen that happen. Guys on the Cubs, Bryant comes to mind, playing through injury and then struggling, and then you find out after the season, oh, they were hurt the whole time, and that just like makes it more frustrating. Yep. It's like, take that extra time on the IL, especially when we have guys right now who like are kind of intriguing prospect or non-roster invitee wise, where it's like, yeah, let them get a few ABs, let's see what we got in them. So
yeah,
I mean, kind of rambling as I'm prone to do, but yeah.
I mean, I like looking at, say, we talk about body types. Like last year, he was like a mesomorph. Like if you look at like different body types and you go and study that, and he came back an endomorph, like more of a round shape. Before he was kind of built with a V shape, like upper torso, and then he came back and it was like a brick. He looked solid, which I don't know. Like both those can carry weight, can carry a little bit extra weight. It's just, I think it's that it goes back to mobility and how we can handle that for the long term. But let's move on. Let's dig into our pitching, because we want to talk a little bit about Keegan Thompson. Velo is down this spring training. These are his numbers so far in spring training for Velo: 90, 91, 80, 91, 88, 91, 86. He hasn't topped out over 91 the whole spring training. Is this a concern? What are your guys' thoughts? Let's start with Ian.
I mean, I'm worried. I don't know if there's any other thing to say except for, yeah, I'm a little concerned, especially because I haven't seen anything super out of the ordinary outside of just like it's got to be something upstairs. I can't figure it out, but I'm concerned. Yeah, he doesn't look anything like himself. He doesn't look like the pitcher who last year had a lot of fight with every pitch and a lot of fight with, every piece of delivery that he had. He administered every pitch as if there was, I'm going to make you work for this. And if he's topping out at 91 heading into this year, which obviously, spring training, chances are it doesn't stick. But yeah, I'm concerned. There's plenty of reason to be concerned about this one right now. So
I remember going into last season, I think it was the Onto Waveland podcast, so the Athletic guys and Brett Taylor from Bleacher Nation. They were talking about Sahadev Sharma had like talked to, I think, Keegan Thompson and Tommy Hotovy about the weight program that Keegan had, the strength program that he had, gone through that off season, and what they had identified in his mechanics that they could see could push him up to the next level. And it had something to do with keeping his right leg, his right glute activated, which is a funny thing to say. Like, I don't know. Keeping my glute activated. But it
Your
had
buttocks.
to do with your buttocks. It had something to do with like keeping that glute activated, and it allowed like for a smoother weight transfer or something to do when he came to his peak, his center of balance was stronger. Something like that. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but I wonder if we're going to find out. It could be a couple things. Maybe the offseason, strength program changed a little bit. Maybe he didn't hit it as hard. I think it's going to come down to a mechanical thing, because if you look at I'm looking at the numbers. I'll be honest. I haven't actively watched any of his outings. I mean, he's only had four appearances this spring, each one just an inning. But he hasn't given up an earned run. He's struck out 5 in 4 innings, only 1 hit and 2 walks. So the numbers look good if you don't take into account the velocity. And like someone like me, I haven't seen the eye test. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's I just saw something when I was looking for his numbers, a headline, something along the lines of, as Cubs bullpen solidifies, Keegan Thompson may be the odd man out sent back to Iowa. And, you make that think like, okay, maybe there's a mechanical issue. Maybe he's just ramping up slower than everybody else for one reason or another. I'm not super concerned yet because it's spring. I mean, look at Steele's outings. Like, his last outing was not great. And I
love your tweet, what you noticed. What was he trying to do?
So he was trying to, it looked like, I haven't read to see if this was the case, but it looked like he was trying to work on his arm side command. So he was throwing a lot of arm side breaking pitches that just were backing up and not coming back to the inside corner of the plate on lefties or the outside corner of the plate on righties. When he was going glove side, he looked a little bit better. Not a lot better, but a little bit better. But it just looked like a lot of his pitches, like he was aiming for the outside, trying to establish that outside corner, and just was not getting it. And you'll listen to a lot of baseball podcasts during the spring. Don't look too much into the results, because especially pitchers are tinkering right now. They're trying to get things dialed in and understand where they're at and what they need to continue to work on, so that when the season starts, they have that in their mind. Like, that's what spring training is for. Pitchers are the reason, I think, why spring training is as long as it is. I mean, even with Seiya and the oblique injury, and obviously the necessity of ramping up in an offensive player's position, it's for the pitchers to get ready. We saw last year with the abbreviated spring training, there were more injuries out the gate. Guys were not ramped up out the gate because they didn't have that extra time in spring training. So that's to say, both of these guys who obviously had big breakout seasons, I think that they'll right the ship, whether it's by the end of spring training or maybe in Thompson's case, it's after a few appearances in Iowa. And who knows, man? I mean, like the bullpen is, there's some sneaky good guys vying for bullpen positions. Like It kind of felt like Keegan was a shoo-in, but maybe he's not. And maybe it's because he needs that extra time. And I think that that's fine. And the Cubs front office did a good job of making sure they're in a good position, that they're not in trouble. They're not in a position, where they're looking bad because Keegan's not ready. 4-3 score update.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, it's perfect. Like if Thompson, and I'm saying that he has a little bit of arm fatigue. I think that like anytime, like I remember coming off the off season and you're trying to ramp it up, like especially like when I was playing college, like, and I'm just throwing from second base, like and you try to throw, you're like, okay, it's game. We're trying to pick up a little bit of the intensity, gain a little bit of velo, and like your arm just feels dead. Like you just have nothing in it. And it's beginning of the year. Like that happens. Like you've seen it with players in the past that like it takes a little bit longer, especially for pitchers, to get going. Everybody's body responds a little bit differently. You've kind of even see it with Brandon Hughes. Like he's kind of going through the same thing where Velo's a little bit down, and that stuff happens at the beginning of the season. He's not in mid-season form where he's used to throwing an inning or 2 innings every 2 days or back-to-back days and not having a day off. So like, I'm not concerned, and I'm not concerned because Cubs have Javier Assad that can fit that role that Thompson did so well last year. Like he's doing that for Team Mexico. He did it. Like he's been that guy that they've trusted. Like, here we go. We're putting in Javier Assad. He's going to shut down this inning. So like, we're okay because we have, like you look at this bullpen, like Merriweather been pitching absolutely lights out, like hitting 100, like has gas. I've loved what I've seen from him. You have Fulmer. Is he going to be a closer? I don't know. We'll get into talking about that a little bit later. Yeah, Boxberger. You have Alzolay. Like they have guys. Cam Sanders, he's available. He could come up, give him a 40-man roster spot. You have Kay. Like you have all these guys that can fill that role and buy Thompson some time if he needs to go down to Iowa and work on things and get that strength built back up. We're okay. Like I'm totally okay with that. Like, and if that's what's best for him, then let's just chill out as Cubs fans. Like maybe they wanted him to start a little bit slower. Maybe we don't know. Maybe last year towards the end of the season, he didn't finish the year great, Thompson. Like
right.
If you look at his numbers kind of dropped down even towards the end of last year. Maybe he did have a little bit of an injury that he was working through, and the Cubs wanted him to slow up a little bit in the offseason and start the season a little bit delayed. We don't know because the Cubs have been pretty hush-hush about these things, which is good. Like, keep things going fast. Don't let the Cardinals and the Brewers know what's going on. Like, but we want Thompson at full strength. So when we're making a playoff push, which I think we will, that we have our horses in the bullpen. Because like we've talked, we have a bullpen this year, and it's deep. It's 2 levels deep, like in the system.
I think what, the only reason that I'm color concerned here is that, and maybe it does have to do a lot with the Cubs being hush hush on this. We know they are generally, the Seiya oblique injury, they're hush hush, it's just an oblique injury. And then all of a sudden we find out he's doing, baseball activity. So I think, I have seen a little bit of the eye test for Keegan, and there seems to be almost a different demeanor. I can't put my finger on it. Like he's kind of nonchalant in general as a pitcher, but the demeanor's just changed a little bit. So it does make me wonder, are they working on something? Is he specifically working on something to maybe manage? Like you said, Mitch, you're right. End of last year, he didn't finish off tremendously well. So are they working on something that maybe allows him to fight through things like that, should they ever arise again? It's the hush hush that makes me nervous, but that always makes me nervous with this team. So
yeah, I do want to shout out Jim in our chat and Eric dropping some comments. Jim comment that the last cut down is going to be an interesting one because there are a lot of good pitchers that might not make the opening day lineup or the opening day roster. And that's right. There might be, which, I mean, just shows how deep we are. The last couple of years, we haven't had those. It's been pretty clear, or we're arguing about who we wish didn't make it rather than who we want to make it.
Right.
So yeah. Since we're talking about the bullpen, let's quickly touch on who do we think is going to get most of those closer innings, the 9th inning. Who's the ball going to be handed to, Jake?
Yeah, I do. You kind of touched on it. I do think it's going to be Michael Fulmer. Fulmer's coming off a strong year last year. It made sense as a veteran. He transitioned from a starting role to a bullpen role. He's a name that the Cubs have been attached to in the past. There were Javi Baez trade rumors early on in Javi's career when Fulmer was a top prospect. The thing that kind of bothers me, so there are a couple things. Fulmer starting as the closer kind of gives me the David Robertson vibes. of hey, we signed an older guy, or even going back, the Chafin vibes, the Michael Gibbon, all the bullpen, 1-year deals that we sign so that we can flip them at the deadline if things are going awry. And it just kind of feels like a preemptive white flag to me, which I don't love. It just like kind of makes me feel icky. It just feels like, already we're kind of,
see, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with it because I think that we're still going to be in playoff contention, and we can still, if he has a good season, trade him because we still have guys like Cam Sanders, if he's in the minors, that can come in and fill that. And who knows what other guy might be able to prove to be a high leverage situation guy. Jeremiah Estrada might be taking the closer position. And then, we can flip Fulmer and maybe use him to add what we need. Maybe there's a third baseman that is going to take over Patrick Wisdom's spot at third base, because I know Ian loves Patrick Wisdom. Or like that we can add.
It's our running joke now.
But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe that's what we use to be able to go get a guy that we need rather than getting to fill our minor leagues.
And that's a good way to flip it, Mitch. Like it just is because we have that, like, for me, we have that recent, like, sour, bitter taste in our mouth of like, oh, especially with Chafin, like that sucked, like getting so attached to him and then him getting flipped. I like Jim's comment here. I think by default it's Fulmer's job, but Sanders in that role excites me. I agree on both points. I do think it is Fulmer's job. I think whether the front office would ever come out and say it, he's the reason that they signed him was for him to be the closer. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing that you always want quality depth in your bullpen for sure. But I think like I don't want Fulmer to get every save opportunity. I'm okay with him like using him in high leverage opportunities earlier in a game to maintain the lead, and then put Estrada in there. I think Estrada needs to get as many high leverage / save opportunities as possible this season, because the dude is nasty. I mean, we've talked about that. It's been talked about on Cubs podcasts, blogs, Twitter, whatever.
Well, it'll be for us to watch at the beginning of the season. How does he play down at Iowa? Are they in Iowa putting him in the 9th inning? Because that's going to be telling us what the Cubs are going to be doing with him in the future. Like,
I think I'd be shocked if they didn't put him in as the closer at Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, last year, who'd they have?
Look, I'm good with anybody closing games this year as long as it's not Rowan Wick. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm at.
I'm right there with you.
Expectations are low, though. It's like it's kind of brought up.
The Rowan Wick experience has been like, I obviously there's something there. I know like his spin rates are ridiculous, whatever, but I think the dude has proven, like, I think the dude is showing that he's a converted pitcher, and the learning curve for him, these guys, I think this was talked about on the compound last week. Like, these guys are all athletes. Like, baseball players are ridiculous athletes, despite it looking from the outside like a more sedentary game. The fast twitch muscles that you have to play this game, insane. All of these guys played shortstop on their high school teams growing up. All of them had, were the quarterback or the wide receiver or the point guard or whatever. All these guys were like multi-athlete studs. So it's, with that in mind, it's kind of concerning to me that like it's taken Wick this long and we've given him this long a leash. It's over. Like, let him be somebody else's project. I wish him the best, but like, I think it's time for us to move on. And like, there are a lot of other bullpen arms out there right now, like former Cubs prospects who you didn't even know about. Like, we didn't even think, most Cubs fans didn't even, like, Alex Lang is a guy who's on the Tigers right now who might line up to be their closer. I think the dude's like maybe 30 now, but at one point he was a coveted arm in the Cubs farm system. Like, there's like, he didn't have like the Dylan Cease hype or I don't know, Ben Brown or whoever you want to pick out of the slew of young arms in the Cubs farm system right now. But he was not a non-entity, and now here he is with the Tigers years later, getting a shot and like breaking out in a big way. That's just one example. I can't think of. I think
Jason Adam.
Jason Adam.
He's with Tampa, pitched great. Team USA, he's been pitching great in the World Baseball Classic. And he had a freak
big one.
accident for Iowa where he broke his ankle, and they didn't ever think he was going to pitch again.
Right.
And Cubs kind of just gave up on him. Like,
but now we're at a point where, like, how old is Rowan Wick? He's going to be 31. Or no, yeah, he's going to be 31 in November. But it's just like, I mean, his numbers have been, the last 2 seasons he's pitched to a 4.22 and a 4.30 ERA. And I know that doesn't tell the whole story. But a 1.69 whip last year in 64 games. That's too, like, it's over, man. It's over. So that'll be interesting to see if he makes the opening day bullpen. Like, that's a decision that I don't know if he has options or.
Right. He was sent out in high leverage closing situations, and I don't want to see that at all this year.
No,
there's too much talent in the pen this year to have that be an experiment still to this day. It just doesn't work anymore.
No, talking about the white flag, like, that's a serious white flag if you see him in high leverage situations early on in the season. I mean, here's another number as I scroll down here. Hits per 9. His hits per 9 last year, 11.11. That's insane. Could you imagine if a starter was averaging 11 hits per 9?
Yes, that would be me throwing.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's that we've railed on Rowan Wick enough.
It's just, I think at the end of the day, there's, it's like you said, if you see that there's some white flag issues going on there, and we've just seen it too much, and Mitch, is like you said, that there's too much in this pen already for somebody like Rowan to continue to get chances in high leverage situations that end up really coming back to bite us. And are we going to be division winners this year? Who knows? But you're right. There is a legitimate chance for us to be a wild card team, not with Rowan Wick in high leverage situations, not with the question marks that have been question marks for the past few years. It just doesn't work anymore.
Yes,
and we know
they're going to be division winners because Wainwright and Michaelis are going to have dead arms by the end of the season because they've pitched in the World Baseball Classic.
And Nolan's dinged up a little bit, right?
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for us if Stroman has dead arm because we've got young starting pitching prospects that can backfill the rotation. I don't think the Cardinals have. I don't think the Cardinals have any depth.
No.
They've got some injury-prone arms in that rotation too.
Yeah, they do.
Well, speaking about depth, let's spend a little time of shaking out this bench for the Cubs. Who are the guys that's going to fill out this roster? Who do we expect to be our key bench guys that we're going to rely on? We've seen the Cubs kind of go out and get Rios to kind of maybe fill some at third. Who are some other guys that we're going to trust to hopefully get some time to fill in? We know that Dansby Swanson's going to be playing almost every day. Him and barring any injury from Horner up the middle every day, we can count on those two up the middle. About who are some other bench guys that we're going to be counting on to get some innings and maybe come in and get a late inning pitch hit role.
Jake loves Rios. He just said
it. So the fact of the matter is I love Patrick Wisdom, Ian, as much as I
do this
on
to
Patrick
me.
Wisdom. No. Wisdom's making the opening day roster. I think he's going to be the opening day third baseman. But we talked about it last week. I think the only reason he may not start on opening day is because we're facing Corbin Burns, and his numbers against Burns are terrible. So you might have Madrigal, huh?
Terrible.
Terrible.
I mean, it's just abysmal.
Yeah.
So you might have Madrigal in there instead because of that. I just like it's tough.
And we're a Nick Madrigal podcast because we are Nick Madrigal fan club.
I'm a Nick Madrigal stan. I just want Wisdom to do well so badly. Like, I love his story. Like the promo that he's done for you, like not even being asked to, like, he just seems like a great dude. And he's so easy to root for that. Like, I just want him to have more big moments. On the other hand, Edwin Rios, I don't know anything about the guy really. Like, people are talking about, yeah, he's the left-handed version of Patrick Wisdom. I don't think, first of all, I don't think he's as good defensively, despite Wisdom having a down year at third base last year. I haven't checked the numbers, but just based off of what I've seen in spring training, I'm venturing to guess a little bit more swing and miss. Like, that's why he never really got extended run with the Dodgers, even though the Dodgers are a deep team and obviously World Series contenders every year. Like, if they couldn't find a place for him on their roster, it's kind of funny that we have him and McKinstry, right? Like two previous Dodger guys that just like never really panned out. And it's like, well, maybe there's a reason they never panned out with the Dodgers. And we're definitely seeing that with McKinstry this year.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite baseball writers is Eno Saris, and he on Rates and Barrels does a segment where he talks about teams as like, oh, well, let's do Build a Bench. And he loves doing it. So we're looking at Fangraph's roster resource, which I've mentioned multiple times this spring. So we're looking at the Cubs right now. Key things to note: they have Trey Mancini starting in right field instead of Tauchman, which means at first base they do have Hosmer, and DH they have Edwin Rios. Right off the bat, like, I'm ripping all of that apart. I don't think Hosmer has much run at all with the Cubs. Like, I just don't see it. Instead, I see Mancini playing first base. I see, to get the left-handed bat in there, you've got Tauchman in right field. And I know Tauchman's kind of faltered. He started hot this spring and it's kind of fallen off a little bit. But I like the story there. Chicago area guy. Let him fill in for Seiya and then figure out what happens after that. But he's had recent success with the Yankees when the Yankees were a playoff team. So then that leaves DH, and I don't know. I mean, I guess like Rios at DH is fine if you want the matchup. But I would at this point. He's more of an unknown than Hosmer is, so I'm okay giving him a little bit of extra leash. And then on the bench we've got Yan Gomes, who I actually think Gomes is going to start more than Barnhart. I mean, he's been on a tear this spring. Gomes has looked great.
Yep.
Nick Madrigal, Zach McKinstry, and Christopher Morel. So those are the four bench pieces. And you've got backup catcher and then a backup shortstop in McKinstry, and Morel obviously can play shortstop as well. So I don't know. I mean, like, is there anybody? So I mentioned Tauchman, but is there anybody on there that you guys feel is missing in this conversation? Or am I wrong? Or do you guys disagree with anything that I said?
Mervis, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys think, like, if he's not up opening day, why? Why do you think that is?
Maybe it's I mean,
I don't see him not.
I don't either, but if he's not, I have a hard time trying to figure out who makes it over him at this point. Like, and I think you're 100% right with
unless
Hosmer.
They're going to go with Nelson Velasquez at the beginning of the season, just because they need more people to play right field because Seiya is down, and they have a Hosmer. They have other guys that can fill in. They have Patrick Wisdom who could play first. They have other guys that can fill in at first. That'd be the only reason.
I agree.
That Mervis would maybe start the year at Iowa.
And that's the only thing I can think of that is if the addition of another outfielder is far more important than having him up. But I think Mervis. Yeah.
What's the date? What's the date that the Cubs DFA Hosmer?
Oh, do we have to get it right to the date, or can we just get the month?
I'm saying June.
Oh, you're going with the real date.
June 20th. My wife and I's anniversary. Yeah, just because I feel like the Cubs like to do that. They like to give guys a little bit second chance. Like the Jason Hayward, they just hang on. So I'm going till June 20th, and it'll be because Brennan Davis and there's going to be some guys down in Iowa that push the envelope and are doing well that will make the Cubs make a tough decision. But
I'll say June 24th, which is when I'm singing in Iowa.
I was waiting for Mitch to say the 24th. Yeah.
And it'll just be me singing Hosmer into liberty and freedom. There you go.
Let me look at something. Oh, go ahead. I'm looking something up, Ian. So
no, you're good. Actually, Jim dropped something that I think is maybe Jake can comment on this one, because I think I agree with this. I think Madrigal has to hit pretty well and really, really start putting some balls in play here. I know you love his third baseman abilities, but
so Jim says in the comments, and if you're listening to this on the podcast side, you've made it this far, we go live at 8:30 p.m. Central every Monday night. So if you want to get in on the comments, join us then. So Jim said, Madrigal has to hit 330 to help this team. No power, refuses to walk. I have a couple changes to that. I think any player hitting over 300, just 300, automatically helps this team. I just see there's a score update in the game. Is it 4-4 now?
It's 5-3, but Japan has guys on second and third with one out.
Yep.
Okay.
Bottom of the eighth.
I really like Madrigal, as I've said a million times. I think the guy deserves a little bit of extra run. If he doesn't get it with the Cubs, he's going to get it with somebody else, and he's going to be a 300-plus hitter every season. It may be a more of a hollow 300, and by that I mean like a lower on-base percentage and slugging percentage than you'd like to see, and maybe the counting stats aren't as good. But you are seeing his speed play in spring training. You are seeing that the third base experiment, for whatever you want, whatever you want to say, it's worked so far. I mean, we haven't seen any, I haven't watched every out of every game, but if Madrigal made a mistake at third base, it would be all over Twitter. It would be people would be talking about it endless. It would be all that's being talked about in the Cubs baseball sphere. What was the second part? He said, and no power, refuses to walk. I still think that he's going to find a stroke that he puts balls. He's not going to hit it in a line into the alley, but he'll hit it over the infield and the ball will roll enough that he gets to second base. And if he doesn't get to second base, he's going to steal. I think the Cubs are going to be more aggressive on the base paths. We haven't had much speed in recent years. If you can get contact and speed out of Madrigal while he's playing, an average replacement level third base defensively, that's a really solid player. Any playoff caliber team would take that. Not saying that he's going to be an everyday player for a playoff caliber team, but that's a very, very, very useful piece. And I think he deserves a run to see if that happens. Now, getting back to the Eric, do you want to say something, Ian?
Well, I just want to say so last year he had 3 stolen bases. He only, how many games? He didn't play that many games last year. Was it 59 games? The year before, 54, and he had 1 stolen base. I think this year he's going to have double digits or more stolen bases. Last year, I think he would have had more, but he was coming back from a pretty severe leg injury. And now you get a full year of gaining strength back in that. I think he can help the team in a lot of ways. And I think stolen base department is going to be one of them. You're going to see more stolen bases this year anyway. And he's an asset on the team that does have speed. I feel like he gets really good reads on balls, even though he's not extremely fast. I feel like he can read a baseball. And like from watching spring training games, I've watched quite a few games when he's played third base. He's looked pretty smooth over there. Like made some really decent plays. He's made all the routine plays. And really that's what you need right now is just a guy who can make the play. When you have Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner up the middle, anything to Dansby's right, he's going to get. So really Nick Madrigal only has to worry about going right and picking the line. Yeah. And if that's all he has to worry about, like that saves him. He doesn't have to be a spectacular defensive player because you have a Gold Glover at shortstop. It makes up for it. It does. So like, I think he's going to hit over 300. He's going to do the right things. I'm totally content with him being the starting third baseman. And if Patrick Wisdom can fill in at DH and first base and maybe play some outfield, I'd be totally okay with that.
Yep.
So
Jake, you and I have had plenty of back and forth on Nick, and I think we're both on the same page that he's only ever needed opportunity and some runway to be able to prove, he does have a skill set that I find interesting. I find it, with the right kind of runway and the right kind of time to be able to come back from a pretty serious injury and everything like that. I do agree. Like he's got a skill set that will be helpful to this team in a lot of different ways. Mitch, I think you're spot on. I think 12 or 13 stolen bases is not out of the question for him. And just in terms of like what I've seen in his ability to hit, I've liked because he has this ability to put the ball in really unique positions. I feel like, and they're in places and spots that, defense isn't always used to seeing it in. So the way he hits and the way he puts balls in play is a little more unique than I think other defenders are used to seeing. So
I think that's a good point. I think that's totally, I mean, like thinking back to the game against the White Sox, I think it was like Thursday or Friday last week. He scorched balls in his first two at-bats to first base and then third base, but Vaughn made a great diving play at first, and then the second line drive at third was just straight. It was an atom ball. But then his third at-bat, the BABIP gods rewarded him, and there's just like this little like duck snort flare in between the second baseman and right fielder, but it fell in because it's a spot that like you don't have a defender there. And Nick Madrigal does put balls there because he doesn't have the power. Now before we move on, because I do want to talk about my Hosmer prediction, but Jim mentioned I see Madrigal as this era's Matty Alou, but Alou hit over 300 every year, finished his career with 31 home runs in 15 seasons. That's 31 home runs in 15 seasons. That's like laughably low. But in his prime, from his age 27 to 30 seasons, he finished every season with an OPS plus over 120, and he was a two-time All-Star. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that every day of the week. Like if we get 4 years of good like all-star caliber like contact bat play from Nick Madrigal, yeah, man, there are gonna be some people eating their hats because they wrote him off too soon. God, how many hours have we spent talking about Nick Madrigal on the show? I want it to be over. I want the season to start. I want him to be a producing member of the Cubs so we can put it to bed and like just prove the doubters wrong that like he is a Major League Baseball player that has something to contribute. And just the fact that he's taken on the challenge to play third base and taken it in stride the way he has shows like this guy's a gamer, man.
Yeah.
Like he's the kind of guy that like he's no complaints. He's going to do whatever it takes to help the team win. Like how many times do you hear that cliche in baseball? The fact that he's doing it, just wants an opportunity to play every day or as often as possible and contribute to this team. Stop hating on Nick Madrigal, please.
I'll only do it if you stop hating on Patrick Wisdom.
Oh, I told you it's a tough love. It's a tough love. It's a tough love.
So what's your prediction on Hosmer?
Yes. Okay. So I think I kind of lost my train of thought on it, but I think that he gets DFA'd way sooner because the minor league season starts at the same time as the major league season now. So now that Mervis is back from the WBC, and we get to see him in Cubs camp, I think, did he go 2 for 3 the other day? He had a good game the other day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a great game.
Listen to this, dude. I looked up Hosmer's spring stats. His ground out to fly out ratio is 4.67. So for every ball he hits in the air, he's hitting 4.5 on the ground. Like typical major league is like around 1. Like a high ground ball rate might be like 1.5. He's 4.6 this spring. So he's got a 532 OPS, a 242 on base percentage, which we talked about like a couple weeks ago, Mitch. We were like, oh, Hosmer is predicted or whatever, projected to be the highest on base percentage on the team. And he's got a 242 on base percentage. This is in 31 at bats. This isn't like a small, a relative to the rest of spring. This isn't a small sample size. So if Mervis continues this spring, like proving that he's ready and can handle major league pitching, because he didn't look very good in the World Baseball Classic. But if he continues to show the Cubs front office that he's ready, I don't think he's up opening day, but if he has like a hot week to start AAA and Hosmer's not it, there are enough options. You make that swap immediately. You're cutting bait with the major league minimum, like $765,000 or something like that. Right. And let Hosmer find another team to latch on with. Or
it's funny because the Cubs just use Hosmer to promote like opening day, asking what he's most looking forward to Chicago. Like today, they tweeted it out today.
Yikes. And again, like, we've heard that there may be some players who sometimes tune into the podcast, and like, this is tough, man. Cause this is a guy's livelihood. Yeah. It's the same when you talk about like, I think when I used to listen to Pardon My Take, they used to say like, I'm not coming for a guy's jobs. Like they wouldn't talk about firing head coaches. Yeah. I just want the team to play the best available player. This is nothing against, obviously, I shouldn't have, this is a disclaimer that's not necessary. This is nothing against the individual person, but like, yep. The Hosmer signing from the beginning was kind of like, well, whatever, I guess, like, but I saw it as competition for Mervis in the spring. And I hope that's what we see play out over the next week and a half until opening day and Mervis wins.
Yep. Well, next week, we are doing our prediction episode. So tune into that. We'll make all of our predictions on the season from most stolen bases, most dingers, the end of the year record, all those. We've done it the last 3-4 years. It's been usually a fun episode. We try to have a good time with it. And then we see how many of those we get right by the end of the season. So looking forward to that. So tune in next week. And then we got actual meaningful Major League Baseball games, and I cannot wait. Like I've enjoyed the podcast the last couple of months, but I need to actually talk about meaningful baseball games. That's why the World Baseball Classic has been so fun to watch. Like it means something to somebody out there. And so it makes me want to tune in and watch, where it's been hard to kind of watch spring training. So like, I'm excited to watch my team play meaningful games again and in the friendly confines. And yeah, it can't come soon enough. I got our whole school like to not like on Thursday, everybody in the schools wearing baseball jerseys for that day and like get to wear baseball hats. So I'm pumped. We're making it a day. So yeah, tune in next Monday as we'll do our prediction episode. Thanks for listening to this episode.
Let's let Ian, before we go, Ian, plug where our listeners, Ian Mahan, where can we follow you? What's going on?
Yeah. Writing some new material for a new record right now. So a little quiet on the performance front. Outside of that, you can find anything and everything on Spotify. And hope to see some of you all in Iowa when I'm out there June 24th. So, and then off chance that I'll be down in Tennessee also singing the anthem for the Smokies as well. So I'll keep you all up to date and posted on that. So
Mike just jumped in our comments, so I need to say hi to Mike. So
Hey.
what's up? But yeah, that does it for episode 111 of the Dingers podcast. Thanks for listening. Make sure you're checking out On Tap Sports as we get closer to spring training ending and regular season starting, as they're going to be dropping all Cubs content articles there, touching on topics probably like what we talked about tonight of the bullpen and Keegan Thompson and should we be concerned, all that. Yeah, go check out ontapsportsnetwork.com for all those articles on all your favorite Chicago sports. But yeah, that does it for episode 111 of the Dingers podcast. Thanks for listening and go Cubs.